Hi Year 5 and 6, it's Mrs Hatch here. We've just been doing a lesson in school this morning about 3DShape, so I thought I'd summarise what we've been doing. Starting with, before Christmas we were looking at two-dimensional shapes, so they're the flat shapes that are drawn onto a surface, and the two dimensions are length and width. So a flat shape just has got length and width. So for example, a square that I might draw on the table, or a circle or a hexagon, and obviously they've got sides, they've got corners and things, and the sides can be curved or they can be straight. We've moved on to 3D shapes now, so we've actually got what they call a third dimension. And if I show you briefly with the cube, okay, if I were to call that a 2D shape and I painted it and just printed it onto my hand, then that would still be a 2D shape, two-dimensional. But because it rises upwards from the surface, we've got that third dimension, which we call depth, or sometimes we call it height. So a 3D shape has still got length and width, but it's got that added dimension now, which makes it 3D, which we call height or depth. So that's where the word three-dimensional comes from. Okay, so we've got height, we've got width and length to start with. And then we've also got height, excuse my writing, or we might call it depth. Okay, whereas the 2D shapes have only got width and length, haven't they? Okay, and then we talk about the features or the properties of a 3D shape. So again, I'll demonstrate with the cube. I know we will have looked at this last year as well, but we tend to talk about faces. So the faces, okay, are the smooth parts. You can touch them with your hand like that. So when we're counting faces on the cube, we've got one on the top, 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6 faces on a cube. We've got the sphere, which we'd only call that one face. It's got one continuous curved face. Okay, and we can have curved faces or flat faces. So a flat face on this cylinder would be the bottom and the top, but then the curved face would be almost like a Pringles tube, like the wraparound bit on a Pringles tube. Okay, so when we're talking about faces, it's almost like the bit you could draw a face on. If you like to think of it like that, you could draw a little smiley face onto the faces. Then instead of on the 2D shape we call them sides, on a 3D shape we call them edges. And I always think of edges as being the bit where, if it was made out of really sharp paper, you'd get a paper cut. So edges are these. Okay, it's like the sides, but we call them edges. And it's usually where the faces meet. Yeah, 1, 2 faces meet, and we've got an edge there like that. So if I was again counting the edges on this cuboid, I'd count 1, 2, 3, 4. Exactly the same on the other side, 5, 6, 7, 8. But then I've got 9, 10, 11, 12. So I've got 12 edges there. On this cuboid, I've only got 1, 2 edges. So the edges are almost the equivalent of 2D sides. And then we've got vertices, or if it's a single one, we'd call it a vertex. And that's where the faces, the edges join. So it's the bit where I like to think of it as the bit where you'd probably prick your finger if it was made out of metal or something. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this square-based pyramid. Okay, so the faces are the smooth bit where you could draw the faces on. The edges are these parts, yeah, and you've got to really think about the dimensions of a shape when you see it drawn. to be able to visualise these features or these properties. And then the vertices, they're the pointy bits, the sharp bits, like the corners where the edges join. So for example, on this vertex here, I've got 1, 2, 3 edges that join together to make that sharp point, which we call the vertices. All right, and I'm going to show you these shapes in real life, and I'll post a copy of this, but I'd like you to have a go at putting the names of these shapes, okay? How many faces you think it's got, how many edges and how many vertices. And if you've not got a printer, you can just replicate this without drawing them. You can just replicate it on a piece of paper, write the names and then all the different features, make a little grid. Okay, so I'll show you the shapes. The first one is the cube. Okay, like a lump of sugar, that's the cube. Very similarly, we've got the cuboid, very much like a cube, but instead of having all square faces, it's got some rectangular faces as well. So that's a cuboid. Then we've got, think of the Pringles tube, we've got the cylinder. Okay, there's the cylinder with the curved edge. Then we've got the sphere, funny spelling for sphere, S-P-H-E-R-E. So it's almost like a 3D circle, isn't it, like a ball. Then we've got the triangular based prism. And the reason I know that this is a prism is if I were to chop it any way down there, I would still see the exact same shape as I've got at the front there. Chop, 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 chop. Think of it as those bars of soap in Lush that you can buy. Yeah? And because it's the same shape all the way down, then that makes it a prism. Okay? Whereas this is a square-based pyramid. It's not a prism, because if I chopped that square continually all the way down, it would get smaller and smaller, wouldn't it? So this is a pyramid rather than a prism, okay? And because it's got a square base, it's called a square-based pyramid, okay? And this one is actually Mrs. Hatcher's favourite shape. It's a tetrahedron, but you could also call it a triangular-based pyramid, okay? Nice simple little shape, triangular base, and then it's got 3 other triangular faces as well. All right? So they're the shapes that you're going to be identifying on here and writing out the properties for me. Okay, thank you. And I'll put the answers on and the question sheet and the answers on then a little bit later. Hope you're all okay. Take care. See you soon. Bye.